Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, featuring today's top directors sharing behind-the-scenes stories of their latest films and insights into the craft of directing. Please take a second to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Robert Eggers' new psychological thriller, The Lighthouse. Set in 1890s New England, the film tells the hallucinatory story of a grizzled veteran seaman and a novice lighthouse keeper who are thrown together on a harsh assignment. As isolation and alcohol begin to eat at their sanity, they become threatened by their own nightmares. In addition to The Lighthouse, Mr. Eggers' credits include the feature films The Witch and the short films Brothers, The Telltale Heart, and Hansel and Gretel. Following a recent screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Mr. Eggers spoke with director Rian Johnson about filming The Lighthouse. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
How about a hand for Robert and his incredible movie? What a singular achievement.
Thanks.
There's nothing better than when you're watching a movie and you have the combined feeling of, I can't believe this exists, and it feels like it was made just for me. I love this film so much, man.
Gee, thanks.
So I'm gonna be very selfish and take a little time and ask Robert some questions I'm curious about. Then I promise I'll open it up to you guys. I'm sure you have questions to ask him as well. So I was also a very big fan of your first movie, The Witch. Weirdly, this feels almost like a kind of like a flip side of the coin of this. Feels like the masculine version of The Witch in a weird way. But coming off of that, I'm curious what the path was to this. I'm sure as someone who made a stylish, well-made genre movie, I'm sure the studio farm system probably was knocking at your door. What was your path from putting The Witch out and having it be very well received to deciding you wanted to do this one and making this movie?
When I won the director award at Sundance, like 10 minutes later, somebody was contacting my agent about like franchise stuff, and that kind of scared me and made me really realize like, wow, this is a fickle business. No one's seen my movie, They just haven't seen my movie. And that was good, but I didn't think a movie about a bunch of Puritans praying in the woods, witch or no witch, was going to find the audience that it did. I really didn't. That's not that I thought it was bad. I just, come on. But it, of course, it opened doors, and I was really eager to not mess up the opportunities that had been given to me, and I was developing some larger things that I had written, but they were still larger, and I realized that navigating the studio system ain't easy. And I called my brother and I said, Max, remember that Lighthouse movie we talked about, before The Witch was financed? We should probably write that together, because I think it would be wise to have something in my back pocket just in case one of these other things doesn't materialize. So basically, when we were trying to get The Witch financed, I had dinner with my brother, and he said, I'm working on a ghost story in a lighthouse. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. I wish I had it. And a few months later, he said it wasn't really working out, so I asked him if I could take a crack at it. And he was working on a modern version. Poe died writing a story called The Lighthouse, and my brother was trying to finish that, but it was contemporary, and it had a ghost, and it was whatever. But when he said ghost story in a lighthouse, I pictured this black and white, crusty, dusty, musty atmosphere, the boxy aspect ratio, this world, and I wanted to find a story that could suit that atmosphere. And I started to research, and I thought it needed a mermaid, and it should have a mystery in the light, and it should have this foghorn, which puts us with both of those elements. And wanting the lighthouse station to be dilapidated, that meant it was going to be in the 1890s. Whatever. I also wanted it to have flatulence from the beginning. And
I wondered if that was something you came up with in the mix, or if that was written in. So it's good to know that flatulence was written in from the start. That brings me comfort.
Yeah. I mean, I in the beginning, before The Witch was made, it was just sort of about, nothing good happens when two men are trapped in a giant phallus, right? And so every fluid that can be excreted from a biological male body is in this movie. But post Witch, look, The Witch has to take itself very seriously and be, aside from the twins, like utterly humorless to work. But I felt that there's something like film student-y about it a little bit to me. And I thought, if I'm going to explore misery again, we're going to have to be able to laugh in the face of misery.
I'm so relieved to hear you say that. I was laughing a lot during the movie. It's a very funny film.
Good, yeah, and it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And weirdly, like some of the audience, a lot of the audience members who it hasn't clicked for, ironically, are big fans of The Witch, who are coming in expecting this like tonally austere, heavy movie, and then Defoe farts, and they're thinking, how do I react to a serious fart? But no, laugh. It's okay. That was my intention. So.
It's pretty amazing.
But then for whatever reason, this was the thing that was greenlit on my slate. The most.
Who did you make it with? Was it A24 from the start, or did they pick it?
It was New Regency and RT Features first, and then New Regency, and then we had a meeting where can you shoot it in color? No. Can you shoot it in color digitally and then go black and white? No. Can you at least use color negative? Because we'd love to have a color version for certain foreign markets that won't. No. Okay, let's call A24 and do it together.
The one group insane enough to.
They were all incredibly. I'm not just being a sycophant. This thing.
But
was
the fact
made.
that this exists, yeah, exactly.
So they were all on
know.
board once they were on board.
So, I was going to ask about the question, because you did shoot on black and white negative. You didn't shoot, and, beyond even... So there's... That's such a distinct choice, also because a lot of times you shoot color even just so you'll have more control over the tonality of the black and white when you finish it. How much of shooting black and white stock... there's obviously a lot of questions that go into that. Like, how much of that was just you wanting to get back to that feel? How much of it was protecting yourself against even having the option of flipping the switch and going back to color, or a color version being put out and, in a foreign territory or something? What were the factors in your head? It sounds like it came kind of fully formed to you. It's got to be black and white. It's got to be this, silent film ratio. What were the factors that went in there?
Yeah, Jaron, if you have anything good to say about the cinematic language of my movies, it's very much a collaboration with me and Jaron Blaschke, the DP. I'm not Scorsese, saying this is the shot list. We do our shot list alone, then we come together and make our greatest hits. He's usually elevating my sequences, and I'm usually simplifying his. And
so you each map it out separately, and then you come together and say, "I have this, I have this."
Yeah, actually, there was some scenes that we just kind of did together on this one, just because of time and how the schedule worked out and whatever. But in the past, and in my short films, that's how we've done it. I imagine in the next one we'll be in the same room from the beginning, just because of time. Yeah, so we've been fantasizing about this for some time, and something that we thought of, particularly Jaron, was orthochromatic film stock would really be the way to go. Which, among other things, the main thing about orthochromatic film stock is that it's not sensitive to red. So red is rendered black. So the rosy skin tones on a Caucasian face renders darker. So in the Eisenstein, that's why all those Russians look so tan. And then in Hollywood, they're wearing white pancake makeup to compensate for the orthochromatic stock. Now you can't.
Does that still exist?
No,
I was going to say
no. And we looked into it, but we couldn't have afforded it if to be remade for us. Blah blah blah. And so we liked XX negative. The blacks bottom out suddenly in a way that's very satisfying and just says, we remember it. We remember it from watching old movies, and it has the micro contrast is really extreme. And then Jaron worked with Schneider to develop a custom orthochromatic filter for us. And then additionally, we were using lenses as early as 1905. We had an uncoated Pathé from 1905, and we had some Petzval lenses from some 19th century designs that were newer. But our main set of lenses were Baltars, not super Baltars, but Baltars before they were super, from the 30s. And they soften some of the micro contrasts and create an interesting glow.
What speed is the film?
I don't remember,
Okay.
but it was slow, and the filter only made it slower, and so obviously we weren't lighting it like an old movie. We were lighting it using our practical fixtures. But of course, if this were an old movie, you would see the flame of the kerosene lamp, and then there would be a movie light lighting the scene. But what we did is we had like a 600-watt halogen bulb on a flicker dimmer in all those in all those scenes. And it was, really coming from Alexa and fast film stock, it was so bright. People were wearing sunglasses when we were doing night interiors. But again, this is fussy and it's nerdy and it's fun to talk about in this forum. But why do this? One, it says the movie's old. It takes place in a time when black and white photography existed. But two, this is a bleak, austere story, and I feel like color is the best way. Black and white is the best way to tell this story, and color is only going to mar things. And again, with this orthochromatic filter, it knocks our blue skies, if we have them, which we rarely did, into something white and bleak and stark and harsh. And then the boxy aspect ratio, we were shooting in 1:19:1 early sound aspect ratio, which there's a Pabst film, Kameradschaft, that takes place in a mine, which is probably the only other movie that makes sense to use this aspect ratio, because Pabst was shooting vertical objects like the smokestacks, and where we have our lighthouse tower, and then the cramped mine shafts, and then the cramped interiors of this thing, and then because we're using spherical lenses, it's actually taller. So it's a great aspect ratio for these close-ups. You don't need flab on the side. You just have Robert Pattinson's cheekbones, Willem Dafoe's cheekbones, in all their glory on these old lenses.
Those two men, they feel like their faces were created by God to be in this movie. It feels so perfect. So speaking of, well, I want to talk about the actors first. Though, real quick, I want to talk about talking about fluids and juices, the elements in this movie, and which also I want a double question, I guess, in terms of creating the rain, the wind, the elements. How much of that did you guys have to bring on the day? How much of it was where you were in Nova Scotia, I believe?
Yeah,
Jay?
the very southern tip of Nova Scotia.
So, and in addition to that, talk a little bit about the actual Lighthouse set and whether you were shooting on a stage for the interiors or whether it was an interior-exterior set. I understand you built the Lighthouse as well, so yeah.
Yeah, so
what the hell, man?
in a perfect world, I would have wanted to have built every single building for control. But because this was kind of a heavy price tag for a black and white movie, I needed to try to find a lighthouse tower that would work, or a lighthouse station or something. And I could not find anything that had good road access, anything that suited the story. We could not get to. So instead, we sought out to find the most inhospitable, punishing rock in the Atlantic that we could find that had great road access. So we built everything, including the 70-foot working lighthouse. They had to build that thing in the dead of winter. 3 nor'easters blew over Cape Forshoe. The rainwater was freezing on the scaffolding. It had to be able to withstand these winds, have actors up there safely, and the Fresnel lens up there weighs 1 ton. So it was, on our budget, that was tricky. So we shot the keeper's cottage. We had an interior set on location, so we could use that as a cover set whenever the weather was nice. But the other interiors were done in warehouses around Halifax. And like the lighthouse, the interior of the lighthouse tower, for example, like we needed to have wild walls to fit the camera and the humans because it's an 8-foot diameter toilet paper roll, and then so a lot of the most extreme weather is real. Oftentimes, if it was gloomy, we could pull out the rain machines and get some light rain. Obviously, when Robert Pattinson's pulling the boat out of the boathouse and there's like waves crashing, that's done in a controlled way so we don't lose Rob and Willem to a riptide. And obviously, the waves crashing over the house and smacking against the lighthouse tower was done with practical effects, but no CG.
Wow. Jesus. And then last question, and then I'll open it up to you guys. In terms of working with those two actors, which is obviously the entire movie, talk about those two guys. Talk about. I know you guys did rehearsal, kind of an abnormal amount of rehearsal. You did quite a bit of rehearsal for this, right? You had a few solid weeks.
No, we had 5 days. Robert Pattinson said it felt like 3 weeks, but but basically because me and Jaron are after a level of craft that we like aren't able. We don't have it. Like we're ambitious and we've only made a couple movies. We're really planning ahead of time. So before Willem and Rob get there, like we've got the whole movie designed. And so the rehearsal period is so the actors can learn their blocking in relation to the camera so that we get on set, it doesn't feel like artificial. They already have a sense of it. And also because there's so much dialogue in this movie, I did want a sense of pace. But I'm not looking for rehearsals at all. I mean, for performance.
How did the actors react to that? Because that can be tricky.
Rob and Willem, they are looking to work with auteurs and want to be auteurs because they're looking to be challenged. So they know that they they have to kind of submit to what the director's doing in order for the film to have a chance. But then from there, I need to understand that they work differently and I have to adjust within what I'm doing to work with them. I think to be super honest, like, ask Defoe, ask Rob, you know what I mean? But where was it tense sometimes? Absolutely. But they understood why it was this way. But the other thing is, though I'm not looking for performance, Defoe comes from theater and has boundless energy, so he brought performance into rehearsals. And I wasn't going to say no. And plus, I come from theater, so it was quite enjoyable. But Rob was really frustrated because he wants to keep things, save it. But that was fine because it was a good. That's the characters, right? So it's Willem Dafoe's Lighthouse. He feels comfortable. It's not Robert Pattinson's Lighthouse, and Robert Pattinson's character is shrouded in mystery and doesn't want to say and So and I'm not doing any kind of sadistic Kubrickian manipulation to try to.
Sure.
No. I don't want to make. I don't want to make that worse. But the camera sees the truth.
Well, it's the biggest compliment I can imagine that was the process, and the film feels as. I don't know. It's obviously a very stylized, very tightly controlled movie, but it feels alive. It feels it doesn't feel boxed in or hemmed in or cute, I guess, is the way it feels. Very kind of messy and alive. And if you got that with that process, that's really extraordinary work.
Well, thank you. But it really is because of Robin Dafoe, and Dafoe, because of his theater training, like Dafoe would tell you that you can plan and actually deliver what you planned, but it still needs to be spontaneous or it's flat, And then Rob, by knowing the camera positions and the camera movement, is seeing how far can he push it within that set of rules,
That's so fascinating. I'm sure there's a ton of questions. Let's go out here, sir, right there. May I repeat the question? So the question was about folklore, and it was about what sources specifically you're drawing from, both for The Witch and for this. Like, what are you putting in your head? Obviously, Melville is the thing. I mean, Moby Dick is the thing that I went to, but I'd be curious as well what other sources you're drawing from.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, yes, folklore, fairy tales, mythology, religion, sometimes the occult. That's what turns me on the most, even more than cinema. And I really, 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 really love cinema. And that's always what I'm looking at and reading. So for this, I'm also for this movie. Obviously, I'm reading about like lighthouse keepers and reading lighthouse manuals. My brother and I were fortunate that there's a lot of lighthouse enthusiasts. So there's lots of books on lighthouses. And there's and on like The Witch, photography had been invented, so that was quite helpful as well. But of course we don't speak we're from southern New Hampshire, but we don't speak in rare coastal Maine dialects that don't exist anymore. So yeah, we're going to open up Melville. That makes sense. And look at lighthouse keepers' journals and whatever. But the most helpful source was a woman named Sarah Orne Jewett, who was writing in the good old state of Maine in this same period, and she was interviewing sea captains and sailors and farmers, and then writing her stories in dialect. So studying her work was really incredibly helpful. So Sarah would hate this movie for sure. But thank you, Sarah, for doing the work that you did. Yeah.
I was thinking the exact same thing. The question is, was it real dirt going into William Dafoe's mouth, or cocoa powder, which I think in my head I said, please let that be cocoa powder.
It was dirt. Willem knew what he signed up for, and again, like Willem and Rob, they want to give 200% to everything, and they love a challenge. Someone asked me, like, why didn't you shoot that on stage earlier today? And I was...
Did you not?
No.
The shot down into
the shot in was also on location. So he was in freezing cold water, and we were shoveling that in his face. Neil Davidson, the stunt coordinator, who was like carefully sifting through the dirt to make sure that there was no rocks and pebbles and stuff. But we did 2.5 takes.
Let's hear the story about the half take.
Well, take one just didn't have enough dirt, and take two, the Cape Foreshoe winds picked up, and so the techno crane was wobbling, and so we cut like very quickly, and then take 3 was quite incredible. And because of scheduling, because we were always needed this bad weather. We were constantly tying the schedule in knots to accommodate that. So out of a bad series of coincidences and duels with Mother Nature, we shot that on day 2. But what was fortunate about it is, one, Willem got it over with, but 2, the Nova Scotia. If you ever have the opportunity to make a movie in Nova Scotia, if it ever makes sense, the crews are incredible, and I really recommend it wholeheartely. But they, after seeing that, like if there was anyone who was on the fence about, really jumping in there, they that got them there.
How many days was your shoot?
About 35.
35. Okay, that's fast. Yeah, the birds. What was the process of working with some good gull performance in this movie?
Yeah. Thanks. Don't ever make a movie with a goat as a major character. Definitely don't do that. But if you want to do seagulls, they're great. We really didn't know how I was going to be secretive, but Rob and Jaron have been talking about it, so I'll let it out there. We really didn't know what we were doing with the birds. And we shot with the stand-in, a puppet stand-in, which makes a couple of very, very fleeting appearances in the film. And then Chris Columbus, who's an EP, called up the owl trainer from Harry Potter, who had 3 seagulls in the UK that were classically trained British actors, and they were just incredible. And so they were done after the fact on a green screen.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, fantastic sound design in the movie. And what's the process? How early did you start? Is it the same sound designer from The Witch? Just talk about the whole process.
It was not the same sound designer as The Witch. Damien Volpe did my 2 short films that are not terrible, and I wanted him to do The Witch. Adam Stein did a brilliant job in The Witch, but really brilliant. But I couldn't work with Damien because of Canadian financing shenanigans. But he was on this, and he's so uncompromising, and the sound design starts with me and Louise Ford, the editor. We do a lot of this work because the whole movie's atmosphere. So if you don't have that when you're working, you don't know what you have. And Damien started early doing some stuff that was particularly complicated. But yeah, I mean, I think originally I wanted to have a mono soundtrack and keep it.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. But then when we were shooting on Cape Foreshoe and really experiencing the sound and the hugeness of the sea and the unrelenting winds, I realized this is something else. But it was a tough job. It was a long, and I mean not really long, but it was a hard mix. Because you've got the storm for half the movie, you got to keep this foghorn going for most of the film, and understand that it could drive Robert Pattinson crazy without making the audience want to walk out of the theater. And then there's all this dialect that is like incomprehensible that then has to go over that. It was a challenge. You know, the grade was quite easy because there's no latitude on XX. It's a little bit. It's either here or here. And so we were able to take days out of the grade and put that money into more mixed days because we really, really needed it. Gotcha. And in the end, you know, we recorded the sound digitally, but they fed it through an Nagra, and we also mixed through an analog box that would make certain frequencies distort as they would if this were analog to try to somehow match what was on screen. And the score was also something that I originally wanted to be very minimal, only horns and pipes and things that you could blow into that echoed the sea and the foghorn and the flatulence. And I did not want any strings because The Witch was so string heavy. And in this like post Johnny Greenwood art house guy, we've heard it a lot, you know. And Mark Corvin, the composer, was like, I think you're probably going to want some strings. And so the minimalist brass turned into maximalist brass. And then he was right. I did need some string tones. There's a reason why those Penderecki-esque string rises are a thing to create tension because they work. But then we also realized that we needed something to kind of hint at that it looks kind of like an old movie. Yeah. So that we had these kind of Bernard Herrmann-esque low string motifs throughout to kind of go there. So that there was a learning curve.
So effective, man. That moment where the sound all goes away, where you go literally to nothing when Defoe's it is so
cool.
Incredibly, has an amazing emotional effect. Are you going to do, I don't know if you've done a film print of it? Are you going to?
We haven't, but we will, and we need to.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's kind of the other half of everything. Yeah. Right there, in print. How did you get your two actors? Who hopped on first?
It's very. I mean, I think I said earlier, like I really didn't expect that The Witch would find much of an audience, but 2 of the audience members that it found were these 2 gentlemen, and I got an email one day saying Defoe wanted to meet me, and I was like, I mean, he's a huge hero of mine, and I was shocked, and I'm nervously combing my beard, and when I sat down with him, I was like, oh, like we're kind of on the same page. That's insane, and that sounds like I'm complimenting myself, but I think growing up drinking from the fountain of Defoe, like a lot of his performance is inspired how I think about performance, And Robert Pattinson's someone who I've always I didn't watch the Twilight movies until like kind of recently, and they are not good. But even in those days, I thought he was interesting, and I never really wrote him off. And then as his career has moved forward, he's become quite incredible.
He's one of the most exciting young actors working today. Well, because he chooses to work with, it's the directors he chooses to work with, the projects he's been choosing, uses his powers for good. So,
yes, he is wise with that. And I approached him for a role playing a sherry-drinking, cigar-smoking English gentleman in a movie that didn't get made. And he was kind of like, there's no challenge in that, and I'm only interested in things that are weird and challenging. But
cut to.
Yeah. So so when this became the movie that looked like it was going to happen, I mean, who the hell else could play these roles? Yeah. And having this relationship, I called up Willem, and I said, Willem, it's you and Rob. It's a two-hander. We're building a lighthouse, bad weather. What do you think? He said, it's good. He's similarly said, like, Rob's mysterious. I like it. Yeah. And Rob said, okay, yeah, this is weird and challenging, and Defoe could scare me. Yeah. So let's do it. So it was simultaneous, really. I really, I'm super fortunate.
Yeah. On that vocalization, man, The Witch blew me, and I know a lot of us away. And with this movie, you've just become one of those young filmmakers who I cannot wait to see what you do next, as I'm sure a lot of us do. And guys, thank you for coming out. And please, everybody, tell your friends to go see this amazing, weird movie that's a miracle that it is up there on the screen. Let's give it up for Robert Eggers, please.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, you can find past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay tuned in the coming weeks for more great Q&As with directors Ron Howard and Taika Waititi. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow cinephiles find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.